Who survives? Who merges? Who disappears without a trace? From the very beginning, Earth has been a stage for randomness and ferocity. Long before life as we know it existed, the young planet was a battlefield of cosmic forces. One of the most extraordinary events was the formation of the Moon, born from what scientists call a giant impact. Imagine Earth, molten and volatile, colliding with a body the size of Mars. The force of that strike was unimaginable. A spray of molten rock and debris flung into space, a chaos that could have ended everything. And yet, from that violent dance, the Moon emerged, stable, quiet, orbiting, subtly controlling tides, tilt, and the very rotation of the Earth. Without it, climate might swing unpredictably, oceans might freeze or boil, seasons might spiral into chaos. Life, if it survived, would be forced into forms alien to what we see today. That impact was no scheduled event. It was a fluke, a chance alignment in the vastness of space. And yet, its consequences ripple through time. The Moon is not just a satellite. It is a stabilizer, a regulator, a silent partner in the survival of the planet. And this is only the beginning. Every subsequent collision, every merger, every random fluctuation created forks in the road. Some outcomes closed doors forever, sending species, structures, or possibilities into oblivion. Others opened new paths, offering the opportunity for complexity to arise. Earth is a story written in accidents that persisted, chaos that became ordered enough to endure. And life itself mirrors this cosmic unpredictability. In the earliest oceans, molecules collided and combined, not guided by foresight, but by chance. Some molecules found stability, others did not. Among them, one molecule learned to copy itself. Another discovered a way to harness energy. These were small flukes, imperceptible at the time, yet they laid the foundation for everything that followed. The first cells were not inevitable. They were delicate, ephemeral, contingent on the rare alignment of chemical and physical conditions. Without them, evolution would have had no foothold. Then came symbiosis, the most astonishing of early accidents. One cell swallowed another, not to consume it, but to cooperate. From this unlikely partnership arose eukaryotic life, cells with compartments, with internal systems that could specialize, divide labor, and survive challenges that alone they could not. From this partnership came complexity, and from complexity, the roots of everything we now recognize as living forms. Multicellular organisms, ecosystems, the rise of brains capable of awareness, all built upon these early mergers. Every stage depended on what came before. Without molecules capable of stable replication, no cells could exist. Without those early cells, no symbiosis could occur. Without symbiosis, no complex life. And each stage required precise conditions, the right supply of energy, protection from destructive forces, and time enough to allow processes to unfold. The planet itself had to maintain balance, a delicate tilt, a stable orbit, an atmosphere thick enough to shield and thin enough to allow radiation. The very ground beneath our feet is a product of survival against the odds. Consider the vast improbabilities. If the Earth had been slightly closer to the Sun, its oceans might have boiled, slightly farther, and they might have frozen. A stronger gravitational pull could have crushed the atmosphere, a weaker one, and it could have drifted into space. The chemistry of water had to be just so, the folding of molecules just right, the timing of collisions precise. Each narrow window of stability was a doorway for life to step through. Miss the doorway, and evolution takes an entirely different path, or no path at all. And yet, through all this, the system holds. Chaos births structure. Collisions, flukes, and accidents do not simply destroy. They filter, shape, and occasionally stabilize. The Earth's early history is not a story of inevitability, but of persistence. Rare events happen, and when they do, their echoes shape the possibilities of everything that follows. The survival of one fluke allows another to emerge. One chance merger opens the door for complexity. One stable orbit sustains the conditions for life to flourish. Chaos, then, is not the absence of order. It is the forge from which order emerges. Every asteroid, every collision, every random chemical reaction played a role in sculpting the world. And the moon, silently watching, remains one of the most extraordinary products of that cosmic unpredictability. It reminds us that survival is neither guaranteed nor guided by intention. It is fragile, fleeting, yet capable of giving rise to something enduring. Earth is a story of improbable endurance, a planet shaped by chance, yet somehow capable of holding itself together long enough for complexity, life, and awareness to emerge. And as we gaze at the moon tonight, or watch the tides ebb and flow, we are witnessing the outcome of accidents that, against all odds, became permanent. Chaos, creation, and chance. They are not just the beginning of Earth's story. They are the reason we are here, able to ask the questions, watch the patterns, and marvel at the improbable persistence of a world that survived its own violent birth. How did life take root on a planet forged in chaos? How did inert molecules, tossed together in primordial oceans, become the intricate web of existence we see today? The story of life is not a straight path. It is a tapestry woven from rare chance events, tiny miracles that persisted long enough to matter. Every molecule that survived, every reaction that succeeded, was a step along a razor's edge of possibility. At the heart of this story is DNA, the molecule of memory. A fragile string of chemical instructions capable of storing vast amounts of information, replicating itself with astonishing precision. Imagine a library that writes itself, copies itself, and passes its volumes to the next generation, all without a librarian. It is not inevitable that DNA should exist, nor that it should be stable enough to survive the harsh environment of early Earth. But it did. And with DNA came the rise of proteins, molecules of remarkable versatility. Proteins can fold into countless shapes, performing tasks as catalysts, as structural supports, as molecular machines. They could grab, bend, bind, and release. They were not designed. They emerged. And yet, in their emergence, they laid the foundation for every living thing to come. Then came the eukaryotic cell, a radical leap, one that changed the rules of what life could become. Picture a single cell, simple and self-contained. Now imagine it engulfing another, not to digest it, but to live with it, cooperate with it. This symbiosis was more than survival. It was creation. The engulfed cell became mitochondria, the powerhouses that fuel energy for larger, more complex organisms. Nuclei formed, housing DNA safely in compartments, allowing specialization, division of labor, and greater flexibility. What looks like an accident, a fluke, becomes permanence. The improbable union of two simple organisms gave rise to a new way of being. Every one of these breakthroughs depended on narrow conditions: the chemistry of the primordial soup, the energy provided by sunlight or chemical vents, the stability of cellular structures. All had to align just right. A single misfolded protein, a miscopied gene, a failed merger could have sent the trajectory of life down an entirely different path. Yet, against overwhelming odds, these lucky breaks succeeded, stacked upon one another, building complexity layer by layer. Consider this. Without DNA, no memory. Without proteins, no function. Without eukaryotic cells, no complexity. Without cooperation, no stability. Without sexual reproduction, no rapid innovation. Each was a threshold, a rare event that expanded what was possible. Life did not stumble into intelligence or ecosystems by inevitability. It wandered, grazed, collided, and sometimes survived by the narrowest margins. And each survival created the potential for the next breakthrough. What we see today, the forests, the oceans, the intricate interplay of species, is the result of countless microscopic accidents that became permanent. Life is an accumulation of improbable events, a chain reaction of lucky breaks that together produced a world capable of thought, reflection, and awareness. And yet underlying all this is a paradox. The same processes that allow life to flourish also leave it vulnerable. Extinction looms, disease spreads, environments shift. Stability is temporary, a fleeting window through which life persists long enough to create complexity. Life's history is a reminder that what seems ordinary, the rhythm of the heartbeat, the structure of a leaf, the replication of a single cell, is anything but inevitable. Each layer is a product of delicate alignment, rare events that worked, flukes that endured, accidents that became architecture. And the story continues, unfolding with every generation. What does it mean to be aware? To not just react, but to observe, to remember, to imagine possibilities beyond the present moment. The story of consciousness is the story of life layering itself upon life, each stage building upon the last, forming structures of unimaginable intricacy. It begins with the simplest neurons, tiny cells responding to light, to touch, to chemical signals. Simple reactions, yes, but enough to create patterns, enough to create memory. Over millions of years, neurons did not remain isolated. They formed circuits, connections that allowed signals to travel, to loop back, to integrate information. A network emerged, not designed by intention, but shaped by trial, error, and survival. Some pathways thrived, others faded away. Each connection, each reinforcement, each pruning of excess wiring created the scaffolding for increasingly complex thought. From circuits came coordination. From coordination came regions with specialized functions: movement, pattern recognition, sensory integration. And on top of that, layers upon layers of interconnection evolved, creating the brain not merely as a controller of reflexes, but as a processor of experience. Awareness, once a faint echo in a single cell, became amplified, nuanced, reflective. Consciousness arose as a layered system, dependent not just on the brain, but on the history of biological evolution that made it possible. Every layer required a foundation. The development of neurons relied on stable chemical gradients and reliable energy sources. The growth of circuits required time and protection from the chaotic forces of the environment. The coordination of regions needed consistency in signals, a balance between excitation and inhibition. At every stage, thresholds existed. Too little energy, and the process stalled. Too much chaos, and fragile structures collapsed. Timing was critical. The EME. And here lies a profound paradox. Complexity does not require perfection. Evolution does not design the ultimate brain. It preserves what works, what survives, what can adapt. Layers are built upon layers, sometimes awkwardly, sometimes with overlapping functions or redundant systems. Imperfections persist because they are survivable. The human brain, for all its capabilities, is vulnerable to breakdown, distortion, and limitation. Yet it continues to operate, to learn, to imagine. Complexity is resilient precisely because it tolerates imperfection, because it evolves within constraints rather than defying them. As we consider consciousness, it is tempting to imagine it as inevitable, as a destined pinnacle of evolution. But the reality is far more fragile, far more contingent. Every thought, every perception, every self-reflection is built upon a series of events, a convergence of systems, each relying on precise timing, sufficient energy, and stable environmental conditions. Consciousness is not guaranteed. It is the product of an unbroken chain of rare events, each layering upon the last, each dependent on circumstances both delicate and unforgiving. And yet, here it is. The mind capable of wonder, capable of observation, capable of asking, how did I come to be? It is a testament not to planning, but to persistence, to thresholds being crossed just often enough, to layers building upon layers without collapsing under their own weight. The emergence of consciousness is both improbable and inevitable, a paradox that reminds us of life's delicate balance between chaos and order. As we peer into the mysteries of the mind, we are witnessing the culmination of countless survival stories, chemical accidents, and environmental alignments. Consciousness is the echo of life's history, reverberating through the neurons, the circuits, and the regions that remember, pros. Look at the Earth, not just as a planet spinning in the vastness of space, but as a system, a delicate, intricate system where countless variables have aligned to allow life to exist. Tilt, gravity, atmospheric composition, oceans, chemistry, climate, all of these factors combine in ways so precise that even the slightest deviation could have led to a world unrecognizable, inhospitable, barren. But here it is, spinning, breathing, alive. How did it arrive at this balance? And is balance really the right word, or merely the survival of the good enough? Consider Earth's tilt. A tilt of 23.5 degrees gives us seasons, cycles of warmth and cold, patterns that shape the growth of plants, the migration of animals, the rhythms of life itself. Tilt slightly less, and the seasons flatten. Tilt slightly more, and extremes could render vast regions uninhabitable. It is not perfection, it is viability. A fragile stability, just enough to allow ecosystems to breathe, to flourish, to endure. Gravity, too, is a silent architect. Too weak, and our atmosphere would drift into space, leaving oceans to evaporate and life to suffocate. Too strong, and the planet would collapse under its own weight, crushing landscapes, crushing possibilities. The pull of gravity shapes oceans, guides winds, dictates the flow of rivers, and even influences how our bodies function, from bones to circulation to respiration. Every heartbeat, every breath, is a dance choreographed by an unseen force whose precision allows the improbable miracle of life to persist. Now look closer, at chemistry, at the molecular stage. Water, the molecule we take for granted, is itself astonishingly unique. Its ability to dissolve, to transport, to sustain cells, to moderate temperature, relies on properties so specific that a slight alteration in its bonds could render it useless to life. DNA, the very script of life, depend, and yet even this precision is emergent. No hand guided the tilt, no mind calibrated gravity, no plan adjusted chemistry. These are the results of interactions of physics and matter playing out over eons. Collisions, mergers, shifts in orbit, volcanic pulses, the dance of moons. All these random, high-energy events shaped a planet that could host complexity. The appearance of order is not the same as intention. Earth works not because it was planned to be perfect, but because conditions converged repeatedly to allow life to persist. The narrative of fine-tuning is as much about probability as it is about physics. Chance and consequence intertwine. A meteor strikes at the right or wrong time. A chemical mutation allows cells to survive. A climate shift eliminates competitors. In these stories, survival is less about perfection and more about crossing the right thresholds at the right moments. And when life meets these thresholds, it does not merely endure, it flourishes, adapts, and builds complexity layer by layer. This is where wonder meets reality. We see precision not in flawless design, but in the resilience of systems that work. Mountains rise, rivers carve valleys, storms reshape landscapes, but life finds a way. Forests grow in chaos, oceans teem in turbulence, species evolve through cycles of risk and reward. Fine-tuning is not about elegance or intention. It is about function under constraint, about a planet that sustains processes, not outcomes, that allows patterns to emerge rather than dictating them. And as we contemplate this delicate balance, one question emerges. Are we observers of luck, or witnesses to a deeper kind of order? The tilt of Earth, the pull of gravity, the chemistry of water. These are the rules of the game. The margins are narrow, yet life persists. Survival, adaptation, complexity. They are the echoes of thresholds crossed, of balance. Long before telescopes scanned the heavens, before microscopes revealed the hidden worlds within, humans looked up at the night sky and wondered. The stars, moving in their steady rhythms, the moon waxing and waning, the sun rising and falling. Everything suggested order. Yet this order was enigmatic, elusive. What held it together? Why did the world behave this way? And most pressing of all, who or what had set it in motion? In those early moments of awareness, explanations were personal, tangible, human. The patterns of nature became stories, stories populated by gods and spirits, beings with intentions and desires. Thunder was not random. It was the voice of a deity, the anger of a celestial being. The rain was not mere condensation, it was favor, a blessing to nourish crops and communities. Every storm, every drought, every bloom carried meaning, a message that demanded interpretation. Humans were not merely observers. They were participants, enmeshed in a cosmos that responded to behavior, to offerings, to ritual. Creation myths arose everywhere, distinct yet strangely familiar. In the mountains, rivers, and forests of the world, civilizations told of beings shaping the earth by will alone. Some described battles among gods, titanic struggles whose outcomes determined the shape of continents. Others imagined a single mind, a prime mover, who set everything in motion with intention and care. These stories were not mere fiction. They were attempts to answer the questions that gnawed at the human spirit. Why is there order? Why is there life? Why am I here? Purpose became intertwined with observation. A drought was not simply a climate event. It was a test, a punishment, a call to action. A bountiful harvest was not luck. It was favor, a reward for devotion or alignment with cosmic principles. Life, death, growth, decay, all were imbued with meaning. Humanity sought. Even as civilizations evolved, so did the complexity of their explanations. Philosophers in Greece imagined a prime mover, an unseen mind orchestrating the cosmos with logic rather than wrath. In Eastern traditions, the universe was not created, but unfolded, a vast system of cause and effect, harmony and imbalance. Creation myths shifted from anthropomorphic narratives to abstract principles, but the impulse remained the same: to locate meaning, to trace purpose, to understand the structure behind what is observed. These ancient questions were not naive. They were necessary. They were the first attempts to grapple with variables far beyond individual perception. Timescales spanning millennia, forces of nature invisible to the eye, cycles of life too vast to track in a single human lifetime. The mind demanded coherence, even when coherence could not be proven, and in seeking it, humans laid the foundations for philosophy, theology, and eventually, science. Yet, even with all this reflection, one thing remains true. The earliest humans did not merely ask how. They asked why. They sought meaning in the stars, the soil, the rivers, the wind, not just explanation, but understanding. And while modern science now explains patterns through physics, chemistry, and biology, the impulse behind those ancient questions persists. We still ask why the universe behaves as it does. We still look for purpose, even when the machinery of reality offers only cause and consequence. Perhaps that is the true legacy of these ancient questions. They remind us that curiosity is older than cities, older than writing, older than recorded history. They remind us that humans are not content with mere survival. We seek understanding, connection, and story. And even as we map galaxies, sequence genomes, and decode the building blocks of life, the first question, the question of why we exist within order, still hovers unresolved, yet endlessly compelling. In the end, The ancient questions were never fully answered. They were never meant to be. They were invitations, calls to wonder, to imagine, to participate in the unfolding mystery of existence. And today, as we peer into the cosmos or the cell, as we simulate evolution or explore consciousness, those same questions echo. Who shaped this order? Does it have purpose? Or are we simply witnesses, standing in awe of a system vast and strange, beautiful and indifferent, that allowed us, somehow, to appear and to ask? Ancient questions remind us that meaning is not always given, it is sought. And in seeking it, humans began a journey that continues to this very day. For centuries, the world was understood as a tapestry woven by conscious hands. Mountains, rivers, the flight of birds, the rhythm of seasons, all were seen as evidence of intention. Every leaf, every star, every ripple in a pond was a signature of design. Humans sought purpose in the world, and in doing so, they found order, even in chaos. But what if the universe did not require a designer? What if complexity could arise without foresight, without a mind orchestrating the threads? In the mid-19th century, a quiet revolution began. Charles Darwin, observing finches on isolated islands, noticed subtle variations. Beaks shaped by food, colors influenced by environment, behaviors honed by circumstance. It was not magic, nor divine intention. It was selection. The principle was simple, yet profound. Traits that improved survival were more likely to persist. Over generations, small changes accumulated, producing astonishing diversity and intricacy. Life, it seemed, did not need guidance to achieve complexity. It simply needed persistence, variation, and time. Natural selection challenged the ancient notion that purpose must precede form. The eye, so intricate, could arise from countless incremental improvements, each small step giving an advantage, each failure discarded silently by the ruthless efficiency of survival. Wings, lungs, hearts, structures once thought impossible without design, emerged gradually, iteratively, shaped not by intention, but by consequence. And yet, the results often appear as if meticulously crafted. Could something so seemingly intentional arise without a mind? The answer, Darwin suggested, lies not in foresight, but in feedback. Every ecosystem is a conversation, every organism a participant. The predator adapts, the prey evolves. Plants adjust to sunlight, insects respond to wind. Feedback loops ripple across generations. Success breeds replication. Failure fades into silence. And within these loops, complexity grows, not because someone planned it, but because rules, interactions, and conditions favor certain outcomes. Nature writes code without a programmer, orchestrates symphonies without a conductor, sculpts forms without hands. This emergence, this self-organization, is not limited to biology. Consider rivers carving valleys, crystals forming intricate lattices, storms spinning themselves into coherent patterns. Rules and constraints, when repeated over time, produce order. Patterns appear, sometimes stable, sometimes transient, yet always emerging from the underlying system. It is a universe where laws, not minds, dictate outcomes. A cosmos governed by principle rather than purpose. Yet even as Darwinian evolution revealed the power of natural law, the sense of design did not disappear. Humans, wired to see patterns, continued to recognize order where none was imposed. The brain interprets signals. DNA encodes life. Cells coordinate their actions. All appear as if intended. But intention, in this framework, is an illusion produced by the reliability of iterative processes. The system is not planning, it is responding. It is not choosing, it is adapting. And in that adaptation, the familiar emerges from the unknown. Imagine a forest over centuries. Trees grow, die, and fall. Animals migrate, compete, and cooperate. Microbes decompose, releasing nutrients back into the soil. Every element is bound by rules: physics, chemistry, energy. But no single entity controls the outcome. And yet, the forest becomes a complex, interdependent system, rich with life, resilient to shocks, full of surprises. Emergence without oversight, survival without guidance, elegance without intention. It is design without a designer, structure born from interaction. Even our understanding of evolution itself has evolved. Modern biology recognizes that life is shaped by more than selection alone. Random mutations, genetic drift, horizontal gene transfer, all introduce variation. Feedback and interaction determine which traits persist. Systems evolve not towards a goal, but through pressure, constraint, and chance. It is a delicate balance, a narrow pathway through a vast landscape of possibility. One shift, one accident, and a branch of life may vanish forever, while another flourishes unexpectedly. The implications are profound. Life, complexity, even consciousness, can arise from a universe governed by law, not intent. The apparent precision of biological structures, the symmetry of a leaf, the intricacy of a neural network, reflects constraints and feedback rather than premeditation. Emergence, when guided by rules, can produce what looks miraculous without ever invoking a designer. And yet, it leaves room for wonder. A self-organizing system can surprise, astonish, and inspire just as profoundly as any consciously planned creation. In this shift from design to natural law, humanity's role changes as well. No longer are we mere witnesses of divine artistry. We are participants in a system governed by rules, capable of influencing outcomes through understanding, observation, and action. Science becomes the lens through which we study feedback, iterate on ideas, and explore possibilities. We discover the hidden mechanisms behind what once seemed magical, and in doing so, we gain both power and humility. Perhaps the greatest lesson of natural law is that complexity does not require perfection. Evolution does not produce ideal forms. It produces forms that persist. Life is not optimized. It is resilient. Systems function not because they were designed flawlessly, but because they survived pressures and adapted over time. In understanding this, we can see our own existence not as a predetermined masterpiece, but as a continuing process shaped by rules, interaction, and persistence. So, when we look at the intricate structures of life, at ecosystems balanced on knife edges, at consciousness emerging from networks of neurons, we see the fingerprints of a different kind of intelligence, not a guiding hand, but a system of interaction, iteration, and consequence. Emergence, adaptation, and selection replace intent with process. And in that replacement lies a new kind of mystery. How can rules alone give rise to such astonishing order? Darwin's insight does not diminish wonder. It transforms it. The universe, unplanned and yet coherent, becomes a stage where the improbable becomes inevitable through time, variation, and feedback. Complexity is not designed, it is earned. And in that process, life discovers itself, and with it, humanity begins to understand the profound power of natural law. In the early 21st century, humanity began to create worlds not of soil and stone, but of code and electricity. Machines, once simple tools, evolved into systems capable of learning, adapting, and surprising even their creators. Artificial intelligence, simulations, and virtual environments became mirrors, reflecting the same principles that govern life itself. But what do these digital realms reveal about the world we thought we knew? Consider the virtual ant, tracing invisible scent trails across a digital landscape. Alone, it is simple, predictable, almost trivial. Yet when hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of these digital ants interact, a pattern emerges. Trails form, colonies organize, complex behavior arises from simple rules. Emergence, feedback, iteration. The same forces that sculpt rivers, ecosystems, and brains appear in the circuits of our machines. The digital world is a laboratory for life itself, a place where we can compress millennia into hours and watch evolution unfold in accelerated form. Simulations allow us to experiment with variables impossible in reality. We can shift gravity, alter chemistry, reverse climates, or reroute rivers in milliseconds. And in those experiments, astonishing patterns appear. Algorithms discover strategies, form networks, and adapt in ways that echo natural evolution. Sometimes they fail spectacularly. Sometimes they succeed in ways humans could never have predicted. The lesson is subtle but profound. Complexity does not demand a designer. It arises when conditions allow interaction, feedback, and persistence. Artificial systems are more than models. They are explorations. They test the boundaries of possibility. A neural network that learns to navigate a maze does not think. It does not plan. Yet it discovers solutions, strategies, and efficiencies. A simulation of an ecosystem does not dream of survival, yet specs within it compete, adapt, and collapse. By observing these patterns, we begin to see the invisible scaffolding behind life itself. How interactions, rules, and constraints produce order, resilience, and sometimes surprising creativity. What is striking is the way digital and natural systems mirror one another. In code, as in DNA, information is stored, transmitted, and modified. Feedback loops regulate behavior. Small changes propagate, sometimes destabilizing the system, sometimes producing entirely new structures. Chaos and order coexist, unpredictability and pattern intertwined. A virtual world can be designed to obey laws, yet it can evolve beyond the designer's intention. Nature, we realize, has always worked this way. Emergence is not just a feature of life, it is a universal principle. And the mirror reflects back on us. By observing AI, we learn about learning itself. By watching simulations evolve, we see the subtle interplay of chance, constraint, and persistence that shaped our own planet and our own history. Digital life is a lens through which we glimpse the invisible forces shaping biological life. Networks of influence, thresholds of survival, cascading consequences of small changes. Every virtual experiment is a reminder that complexity is not magic. It is a process. Yet, there is wonder in this process. We are not merely observers. We are creators within the system. We write code, set parameters, and define initial conditions. And still, the systems surprise us. Emergent patterns defy expectation. Unexpected cooperation arises. Novel strategies appear. Randomness and structure dance together, producing forms that resemble life, intelligence, even consciousness, without requiring them. It is a digital echo of nature's own methods, order emerging from the interplay of rules and chance. These artificial mirrors also force reflection on scale and timing. A single change in code can ripple through a simulation, altering the outcome completely. A single mutation in DNA, a single meteor strike, a single shift in climate. Nature operates on the same principle. By experimenting in virtual space, we gain insight into thresholds, dependencies, and tipping points in reality. We begin to appreciate the fragility of life and the subtle stability that allows complex systems to endure. Technology, then, is not just a tool, it is a language. It allows us to converse with principles that otherwise remain invisible. Digital evolution speaks in patterns, emergent behaviors, and feedback loops. By listening closely, we hear echoes of Earth's own history, the rise and fall of species, the branching of ecosystems, the incremental accumulation of complexity. Every virtual ant, every algorithm navigating a maze, every simulated storm becomes a parable of the forces that shaped the natural world. And perhaps the most profound insight is this: if intelligence and complexity can emerge in artificial systems without foresight, then perhaps the apparent design of our own world is not a signature of intention, but a testament to the power of interaction, feedback, and persistence. Order does not require a mind. It requires conditions, rules, and time. And in the end, at realization, mystery is not diminished. It is deepened. We marvel not at what created life, but at the subtle, patient processes that allowed it to discover itself. As we stand at the edge of this digital frontier, we begin to glimpse a new kind of philosophy. We are creators, observers, and participants in systems that reflect the hidden rules of existence. Simulations, AI, and digital organisms are mirrors that reveal the mechanisms behind complexity, the invisible architecture of survival, and the emergence of novelty. They remind us that the universe is not merely inhabited. It is exploratory, experimental, and astonishingly resilient. Perhaps, in understanding these artificial mirrors, we understand ourselves a little better, not as the intended outcome of a grand design, but as a continuation of processes that began long before us, shaped by chance, selection, and feedback. Technology becomes a story we can read, a history we can observe in fast forward, and a glimpse of what systems, digital or natural, can achieve when given time, rules, and room to evolve. And so, we watch, we learn, we simulate, and we marvel. The digital and the natural intertwine, reflecting the same principles, revealing the same truths. That complexity emerges, life adapts, and even in the absence of a guiding hand, astonishing order can appear. Technology is a mirror, but it is also a lens, a way to see and perhaps understand the extraordinary processes that have shaped our world and continue to shape us. Look closely at the world, and it is easy to see the cracks, the jagged edges of mountains, the scars of meteor strikes, the random paths of rivers. Earth is far from perfect, and yet it persists. Life persists. Complex systems endure. Fragility is not a flaw. It is a feature of a process that must balance risk and reward, failure and survival. But what does it mean to endure in a universe that favors neither perfection nor predictability? Every living organism carries evidence of compromise. The human spine, a marvel of flexibility, struggles under the weight of upright posture, a compromise inherited from quadrupedal ancestors. The eye, a window to the world, hides a blind spot, an inefficiency born of evolutionary layering. Even the brain, capable of imagination, reasoning, and creativity, is prone to distortion, addiction, and decay. Imperfections are not mistakes. They are traces of history, layers of solutions adapted to shifting conditions over eons. And life is not alone in this. Planetary systems, too, are precarious constructions. The tilt of Earth allows seasons, yet a slight shift could render climates uninhabitable. Oceans warm or freeze with the smallest adjustments in orbit or solar intensity. The atmosphere, protective and sustaining, is neither uniform nor unchanging. Every system carries risk. Every structure bears trade-offs. Stability does not mean flawlessness. It means survival amidst uncertainty. Consider evolution itself. It does not design with elegance in mind. It adapts through trial, selection, and feedback. A mutation spreads not because it is perfect, but because it survives long enough to matter. Structures evolve through reuse, rather than reinvention, layering compromises atop one another. The result is often messy, inefficient, or awkward, but it is resilient. Redundancy, variability, and flexibility allow organisms to endure environmental upheavals, predators, disease, and competition. The messy architecture of life is its greatest strength, and yet resilience comes at a cost. Scarcity drives competition. Predators and prey follow cycles of destruction and adaptation. Ecosystems collapse and reform around new species. Catastrophes, volcanic eruptions, ice ages, asteroid impacts erase entire branches of life. Every collapse is a test. Every recovery a triumph. Nature does not strive for a perfect state. It strives to persist. Survival, not elegance, becomes the measure of success. This is visible on scales both microscopic and global. DNA, while remarkably stable, is prone to errors, yet those errors fuel evolution. The immune system is adaptive but reactive, learning through exposure to threats, yet vulnerable to the novel and unexpected. Oceans shift, forests burn, storms rage, and yet patterns re-emerge. Life weaves itself into the cracks, exploiting niches, finding balance in instability. Fragility is not an enemy. It is the canvas on which resilience paints. Even at the planetary level, compromise is constant. Mountains form at tectonic collisions, shaping climates and rivers while making the land prone to earthquakes. Volcanoes build fertile soil, but spew ash that can darken skies. Water cycles sustain ecosystems while carving valleys and threatening floods. The world is not engineered for comfort or safety. It is layered, improvised, and enduring. Every imperfection carries the potential for renewal. Humans, too, are part of this pattern. Societies rise and fall, cultures flourish and fade. We construct cities on fault lines, harness rivers for power, and rely on delicate balances of climate and resources. Each choice carries trade-offs. Each system bears risk. The same principles that guide evolution, adaptation, trial, persistence, apply to human endeavors. Survival is rarely perfect. It is iterative, contingent, and sometimes miraculous. In nature, imperfection is inseparable from innovation. The quirks, vulnerabilities, and inefficiencies of life are opportunities waiting for the right conditions to transform them into advantages. Eyes with overlapping functions, redundant neural pathways, and flexible appendages allow adaptation in unpredictable environments. Evolution does not eliminate inefficiency. It finds ways to use it. Resilience thrives in imperfection, in the subtle interplay of constraints, feedback, and flexibility. The world endures not because it was built flawlessly, but because it was built to survive failure. Collisions, mutations, and environmental upheavals are not anomalies. They are the engine of persistence. Systems that can bend without breaking, adapt without rewriting entirely, and recover from loss are the systems that persist. Life, in all its diversity, is a testament to the power of resilience over perfection. And in observing this, a paradox emerges. The world is simultaneously fragile and unstoppable. Individual forms fail, ecosystems collapse, species vanish, but the larger system persists, reshaping, reforming, finding new pathways, discovering new balances. Fragility is not a weakness. It is a feature of an adaptive, self-sustaining process. The imperfections we see are the mechanisms through which the planet, and life upon it, endures. So perhaps the lesson is this: resilience is not measured by flawlessness, but by longevity, adaptability, and the capacity to recover. Nature does not seek beauty, efficiency, or perfection. It seeks survival, and in doing so, creates wonder. The jagged mountains, imperfect organs, chaotic weather, and uneven ecosystems are all part of a system that thrives in complexity. Imperfection and resilience are inseparable. They are the twin threads that weave the tapestry of life. In the grand scale of time, survival is the ultimate triumph. PH. Not elegance, not design, but persistence, adaptation, and the quiet, unrelenting ability to endure. Fragile, imperfect, and astonishingly resilient, Earth and its living systems continue their intricate dance, a testament to the power of enduring, even amidst chaos. And in that persistence, there is awe, there is wonder, there is the story of life itself. Since the dawn of human awareness, we have looked at the world and asked questions that go beyond survival. We watched the sun rise and fall, tracked the moon across the sky, and noticed patterns in storms, seasons, and the life around us. But beneath these observations lurked a deeper, almost irresistible urge. Why? Why does the world behave as it does? Why is there order at all? Early humans didn't separate what we now call science from what we now call spirituality. They saw order and regularity and attributed it to forces larger than themselves: gods, spirits, ancestors. A drought was not random. It was a message. A bountiful harvest was not luck. It was favor. Mountains, rivers, the winds, they were all actors in a story whose author seemed to watch and respond. Purpose, meaning, and structure were inseparable. These early frameworks weren't primitive mistakes. They were attempts to grapple with the complexity of existence. They provided guidance, explanation, and a lens through which life could be understood. And yet, even as observation deepened, humans noticed irregularity, chaos, and the limits of control. The same forces that shaped life could also destroy it. Lightning struck without reason, storms raged unpredictably, and species vanished with no discernible pattern. The need for explanation persisted, but the answers began to evolve. Observation became systematic. Patterns were recorded. Rules were inferred. This was the birth of what we now call science. Science asks the question not of meaning, but of mechanism. It measures, predicts, tests. It seeks reproducibility, consistency, and proof. It tells us how a comet travels, why seasons shift, or how cells divide. And yet, no matter how much science explains, gaps remain. Unanswered questions hover at the edges of knowledge. Why does consciousness arise? Why does the universe exist at all? Why are the Kanbun stance of nature just so, allowing matter, stars, and life to form? Science can outline the boundaries and the rules, but the leap from what works to why it matters is not easily bridged. Here is where faith, philosophy, and human imagination enter the frame. Even in the modern era, when telescopes pierce galaxies and microscopes reveal molecular machines, people still reach toward the why that science alone cannot fully answer. Faith, in its many forms, addresses gaps, not by defying evidence, but by providing biotext for questions that are otherwise unanswerable. It offers stories, symbols, and narratives through which the unknown can be experienced rather than merely measured. But this is not a rigid dichotomy. Science and faith, observation and interpretation, mechanism and meaning, they overlap. Both emerge from the same human impulse, curiosity. Both attempt to understand a world that is structured yet mysterious, precise yet unpredictable. Both recognize that reality, no matter how deeply probed, can inspire awe. And both confront limits, the boundaries beyond which current tools, instruments, or even imagination cannot yet reach. In these spaces, belief becomes not a surrender to ignorance, but an engagement with the unknown. It allows humans to inhabit gaps in knowledge without denying evidence. It is the recognition that while science reveals processes and patterns, some aspects of existence may always remain elusive. And in that tension lies the beauty of inquiry, a universe that is both knowable and endlessly mysterious, inviting exploration on every scale. The human drive to ask why is, in a sense, an echo of the very systems we study. Just as DNA encodes information and ecosystems adapt through feedback, humans adapt mentally and culturally, creating frameworks to interpret what cannot be fully predicted. We build hypotheses, test them, revise them. We construct moral, philosophical, and spiritual systems, layering meaning atop observation. And even when explanations remain partial, the act of questioning itself becomes a form of discovery. Consider how this impulse shapes perspective. Astronomers study distant galaxies, seeking the laws that govern cosmic evolution. Biologists decode genomes, tracing the history of life from single cells to complex societies. Yet, when confronted with the vastness of time and space, when facing the precision that allows stars to shine and life to endure, even the most empirically minded feel something beyond calculation, a sense of wonder, of reverence, of existential curiosity. This is where science brushes against philosophy, where equations meet poetry, and where the search for understanding becomes inseparable from the search for meaning. And perhaps the most profound realization is that the universe is both stranger and more familiar than we imagined. Structure emerges from apparent randomness. Life persists amidst chaos. Patterns echo across scales, from microscopic interactions to cosmic architecture. Observers arise from the very conditions that allow observation. Science explains how, faith and philosophy explore why, and together they remind us that our place in the universe is not passive. We are participants, witnesses, interpreters. In the end, the story of science and faith is not a tale of conflict. but a dialogue. It is a conversation spanning millennia, a layered narrative in which humans attempt to understand both the rules and the resonance of existence. And while the answers may remain partial, the questions themselves shape perception, culture, and consciousness. To ask why is to acknowledge our connection to the systems we observe and the mysteries we cannot yet touch. So, we continue to watch, measure, imagine, and wonder. We chart the stars, probe the depths of oceans, unravel the code of life. We build instruments to extend our senses, yet the questions that drive us are the same as those of our ancestors. Where do we come from? Why does anything exist? What patterns shape reality? Science and faith are not endpoints. They are pathways, guiding us through a universe that is intricate, surprising, and awe-inspiring. In that interplay between measurable truth and unanswerable mystery, we find the essence of the human journey. The urge to understand, to interpret, to seek meaning in a world of complexity and wonder. It is one of the few constants across time, and it is what makes our observation, our curiosity, and our reflection not just acts of knowledge, but acts of engagement with existence itself. Imagine for a moment, standing on a quiet hill at dawn. The first light brushes the treetops. A gentle wind carries the scent of earth and water. In that instant, there is awareness, not just of the scenery, but of being part of something larger, something vast, intricate, and ever-moving. This is not just presence, it is observation, a recognition of being within a rare and unfolding system that has taken billions of years to reach this moment. Earth, with its oceans, its tilt, its seasons, its oceans teeming with life, is not perfect. It is fragile, contingent, astonishing. The systems that sustain life, climate, plate tectonics, magnetic fields, atmospheric chemistry, are the products of countless accidents, collisions, and flukes. Each layer, from the smallest microbe to the tallest mountain, is a result of processes that are neither guaranteed nor repeatable. And yet, here we are, observers aware. What does it mean to be aware in a world like this? Awareness is not just perception. It is the ability to reflect, to consider what has come before, and to imagine what might come next. When we study cells, stars, or ecosystems, we are not only measuring, we are tracing histories, witnessing interactions, decoding the ongoing story of a system that continues to unfold. Life is discovery, not necessarily design, not necessarily perfect, but remarkable in its persistence and capacity for complexity. Every living organism, every functioning ecosystem, every stable climate pattern is a chapter in a story that has no predetermined ending. And we, as conscious beings, are both readers and participants in that story. Each moment of attention, the observation of a star, the recording of a bird's song, the reflection on a fleeting thought, is a recognition of continuity. We are part of a system that loops back upon itself. DNA replicates, ecosystems cycle, climates shift, humans create, destroy, and recreate. Time flows, but patterns echo across eras. Awareness allows us to perceive these patterns, to witness the resilience and fragility that coexist in every layer of Earth's complexity. But what does observation teach us? First, that rarity does not imply perfection. The conditions for life, consciousness, and civilization are narrow. The convergence of chemistry, physics, planetary motion, and biological evolution is improbable. A slight change in gravity, a slight variation in temperature, a single extinction event occurring seconds earlier or later, could have radically altered the path of life. Yet, through what seems like chance, Earth persists. We are here, and in that presence lies wonder. Observation highlights dependency. Nothing exists in isolation. Every species relies on others. Every ecosystem relies on energy. Every planetary system relies on intricate balances of forces. Awareness allows us to trace these threads, to understand the chain reactions, thresholds, and tipping points that shape what is possible. The very fact that we can ask these questions implies that certain conditions held long enough for awareness itself to emerge. We are witnesses to history in motion. Third, reflection reminds us that life is ongoing. The processes that created us continue. Genes mutate, climates shift, ecosystems adapt, stars explode, mountains rise, rivers carve valleys. Awareness does not stop these processes. It watches them unfold, sometimes slowly, sometimes with breathtaking speed. In witnessing, we find both humility and insight. We see resilience where structures survive despite fragility. We see adaptation where systems respond to pressure. We see beauty in the patterns that emerge, not because they were planned, but because they are possible within the rules of nature. And with awareness comes wonder. It is a recognition that we are part of something larger than ourselves, a system that existed before us, that will continue after us, that both shapes and is shaped by countless interactions. Wonder is the natural response to seeing a world that works against improbability, that balances chaos and order, that hosts consciousness amidst cosmic randomness. It is the reward of observation. Yet wonder is not passive. It invites participation. To notice is to engage. To reflect is to connect. The ongoing dance of systems, the rotation of the earth, the orbit of the moon, the flow of rivers, the cycling of life, continues with or without our attention. But our awareness allows us to become part of that dance, to interpret it, to learn from it, to act within it. Consciousness itself, rare and precious, is both a product of these systems and a lens through which they can be understood. Ultimately, this chapter is about continuity. Life, awareness, and observation are not endpoints. They are processes. They remind us that the universe is not static, that our place in it is contingent, and that every moment of attention is an encounter with the unfolding story of existence. We are here, not just physically, but consciously. We can witness the Babel, marvel at the delicate balances, and participate in the ongoing evolution of systems. So, as night falls, as stars appear, as tides rise and fall, consider this. The world we see is neither designed for us, nor indifferent to us. It simply exists, structured enough to allow observation, fragile enough to make presence remarkable, and dynamic enough to make discovery endless. And we, aware and curious, continue to watch, to reflect, to wonder, to exist within a rare system that spins, cycles, and persists in ways that are both astonishing and humbling. Being here, being aware, being a participant in this unfolding complexity, that may be the closest we come to understanding the miracle of continuity. Not by solving every question, not by finding ultimate answers, but by noticing, reflecting, and continuing. And in that act alone, life, our life, becomes part of the story that stretches across eons, carrying the echoes of chance, the weight of consequence, and the beauty of persistence. The planet will keep turning. The systems will continue their intricate dance, and we, observers in the midst of it, will still be here, watching, wondering, and living the extraordinary miracle of now.